So we're going to introduce now the consuls of the Netherlands and the UK here in Miami. And as you can imagine, in diplomacy, you know, when countries work with one another, there's a lot of issues of facilitating business, law enforcement issues that need to be addressed. And as this crowd very well knows, everything nowadays is technologically based. And so we have technologically savvy diplomats here that are going to talk to us about how government gets involved in these issues and how they use it. So first and foremost, I have Natalie. Help. Natalie Olich-Langer. Okay. And her Twitter handle, everybody, we're very much about social media and following each other and creating a community. So be mindful of the speakers during this conference, who they are, and try to follow their Twitter handles. Her Twitter handle is Natalie, Natalieolij, which is like Olige, like a short form of your last name, right?
Correct.
Okay. So Natalie is the Consul General of the Netherlands in Miami. She has a master's degree in international economic relations. She was a Fulbright scholar, has been with the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs in various positions, including in countries like South Africa. You've been at The Hague, and you've been in Hungary as well. Thank you. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you.
Everybody, if we could have a round of applause. Thank you. And we're also joined by David Prodger. And David is the British Consul General in Miami. His Twitter handle, are you ready? His Twitter handle is Dave, D-A-V-E, Prodger, P-R-O-D-G-E-R, F-C-O. And David joined the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in 1999 and has since been stationed in countries like Brussels and Buenos Aires. Do you speak Spanish? Sí, un poco. Okay, everybody welcome them, please. Thank you.
I just turned my phone off.
Thank you so much for the introduction. That was really nice words being said. So good afternoon to you all. Of course, everybody's looking at their screens, because that's where it's happening. We're here. Hello.
And you'll find that we haven't scripted this at all, and we haven't rehearsed it at all, so bear with us. The important thing for us is to have an interactive session with you. So we've had a couple of questions. Don't feel you need to tweet them. Just interrupt as we're going along. If something springs to mind, just ask us, because otherwise you'll get the party line. And I know that's what government likes giving you, but put us on our mettle and give us some questions that we're not expecting.
Yeah, so you can use all forms of asking questions. You can tweet them, because then we will also try to answer them. People that are live streaming now, welcome to you all. You can also tweet them, and here in the audience you can also raise your hand or at the end walk up. So we try to make this as interactive as we can.
Okay, shall we start?
Yes.
Natalie, tell us about the Netherlands and when the government started getting switched on to social media.
So that's a really good question, Dave, because we were actually, as diplomats, not really allowed to use social media until only maybe 4 years ago. We had a new Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he really wanted us to use all the communication channels there are. Because, of course, diplomacy is about connecting to people and communication. So now we're using it, but we only have experience for maybe 3 to 4 years. And you, how did it work with you?
Well, we've been doing it a little bit longer, and we've got a big network as the UK. We've got about 268 posts, all of which are doing it. So if you look at diplomacy, the UK is sort of the number one when it comes to digital diplomacy. And we use it for 3 reasons. Firstly, internally, domestically in the UK, we're trying to get services online. They're quicker, they're more efficient, and being British, we can save money by doing that, of course. Secondly, we want to inform people, and thirdly, we want to engage people. And we found that we're looking at our own demography and how quickly it's changing, and we're all an example of this. We're looking at next generation of leaders. 91% of British people under the age of 24, between 16 and 24, use social media. That's how we're going to get at them, not through the printed media or not through TV, it's social media.
Yeah, and that's so true, because we see it in our municipalities, we see it in our public services. If you reach out through social media or you make it online, you get a lot more interaction. But you already have some experience with, for instance, passports, which we don't have yet. But do you have other examples you can give how you use it?
This started a little bit in government, as government normally does, as a broadcast message. So listen to what I'm saying, everybody. But also as a service message, you know, how can we make life easier for our own citizens? So the idea of passports and visas came from that. We reckon by putting our services online, and in 2013, the government gave departments a challenge to get all of their services, or 25 departments a challenge to get their services online in 400 days. Most of them managed it, and we reckon we saved between $2 to $2.5 billion by doing that. But really for us, it's about engagement and it's about informing. So the way we use it here in Miami, when Tropical Storm Erika was coming through last week, we're trying to inform our British citizens what to do in the case of a crisis like that. Most of them will have no idea. I've only been here a year, I've got no idea. So it's an information tool.
Yeah.
And the other one is to engage, and that's why we're here today, is really engage and try and make better policy and try and have a dialogue about what it is that we do as governments overseas.
That was such a blessing, because indeed, you know, you get this information on Erika, on the tropical storm, and we were really wondering how to best reach out to the people that are here as a tourist. You know, the Dutch people that are here as a tourist, they don't know what to do. We didn't know how to inform them. So we just started posting. We received a lot of help also from our embassy in DC, because they started retweeting us. So we really had an outreach really quick. And thank God the storm didn't hit. But it was definitely a means of getting a message out quickly and having people, you know, understanding that at least they had to listen to the radio or the local authorities. That was what our message was about. But so that's more the information side. And on the influencing, I would say we really tried here in Florida to make people aware of climate change and sea level rise. I know we've been working on it together, but it's quite a difficult message to get out. And you know, we the Dutch, we live under sea level, so we're not really afraid of the water. So we're trying to communicate and engage and influence people that it's not one big dark cloud hanging over them, but there's chances. You just have to think how you manage the water and how you do that. So on the one hand, we try to retrieve information or send out information. On the other hand, we want to influence political, you know, points of view. Do you do the same?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But of course, being British, we like to talk about the royal family and the Beatles. So we do quite a bit of that as well. And actually,
Can imagine, yes.
And that's where I get most purchase, is talking about the Beatles. People love the Beatles, particularly here in Miami. So that's a good win for us. And the other bit that goes along with that, the more serious one of course, is David Beckham. And what's going to happen in Miami with David Beckham?
So much envy these guys, don't you? I wish we had a soccer player that was going to put a stadium here. Yeah.
I wish we did as well. I have no inside information, if that's one of your questions. I don't know.
You know, if you build it, he'll come.
If you build it, he will come. But you're right. I mean, engaging on more serious issues, there's a balance, and I think this is something that government's not really great at, and I put myself in that bracket, between tackling serious issues and tackling the more ephemeral issues. So one of our biggest hits from the embassy last year was on National Donut Day, which is a huge importance, of course, but when you're trying to do that at the same time as persuade people that the Iran deal is a good deal, then there's a balance between credibility and interest, and that's often one of the challenges we face. Do you find that same kind of challenge or tension in what you're doing, Natalie, with the Netherlands?
Yeah, I think we're still trying to look at the issues you want to really reach out and interact, and the issues that you really have to do what we call silent diplomacy. So, you know, for very sensitive issues, you don't want to like share it with the whole world right away, because maybe you don't get anywhere. And that, of course, is still a new thing in our profession, that we have to think about how do we go about something strategically. Should we like send the message out and try to get some public clout and so to support our message, or should we stay behind the scenes and try to influence? So yeah, sometimes things go wrong. Still, I don't know. Have you ever had something that you did put out on social media and it went wrong?
So, as a good civil servant, naturally, I'm not a risk taker. So, standing up here fills me with dread in front of all you people. Of course, I personally would never do anything wrong because I blame it on someone else. But there have been a couple of occasions where one of our ambassadors, who and this made the papers, who was in Santiago, tweeted a natural tweet for a Brit, which is, "Come on, Chile, stuff Argentina at football tonight," and that didn't go down terribly well on the other side. And
Can imagine.
One coming a bit closer to home was, I think on 4th of July last year, we tweeted a picture of a cake in the embassy of the White House, and we put lit sparklers in the cake to celebrate the long enduring relationship between the UK and the US, only to be reminded that actually the UK burnt down the White House in 1814. And perhaps we weren't being terribly sensitive about the way we portrayed our Twitter channels. So yeah, there are little hurdles we have to get through. But you've had a foreign minister who sort of took this to heart, I believe. How did he cope?
Yeah, so our minister who told us, please get out there and please try it out and see how it works. And actually he said, you know, you're also allowed to make mistakes, because in the beginning, of course, when you start to do this, you don't really know how you should go about doing it. And you know, and then sometimes communications and press departments, they think about these nice tweets like your cake, and you never know what the reaction is going to be. I thought that was so funny that people responded that way. But we had a minister who took it really personal, and he's on Facebook. He's really active, and he shares what he reads, and he shares all kind of different things. And actually, he gets so much response that at one time he had to stop his Facebook page for a couple of days because there was an outcry and people were reacting and responding, and he couldn't react to all the people that wanted to know something about him. But you know, another minister got a little bit jealous, and he was quite upfront with using social media as well. He once tweeted when he was in the cabinet meeting what they were just discussing, and the prime minister didn't really like that. So it's still, you know, we're still searching for ways how we should use it and what's the good way and what not. But we do see that we get a lot of interaction, far more than what we used to get when we did everything in the official way and through the official channels. Somebody has a question for us.
So the question, before I hand it over to Natalie to answer, because it was a difficult one.
Thank you.
The question is, do we as individuals, because we've got our own Twitter handles, are we going to find ourselves in conflict with our political masters, in conflict or competition with our political masters? Because we have to develop our own online identity, and will that ever cause tension in what we are saying as an official against what our political masters might be saying?
Well, I think that was truly one of the reasons why we started later from our Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because the minister we had before was really questioning how that would work and how that would relate to him and his views and, you know, him being interviewed. Actually, we have one colleague. He is by far the followed the most. He has the most followers. And this current minister is really proud of him and always takes him as an example. He tweets a lot on his special topic, which is sustainability. And of course, a minister cannot, in depth, take one aspect of foreign policy and send out so many tweets and do so many things. So as a diplomat, you have to, of course, know what your minister wants and what he finds important, but you have your very specific field where you act. So in that way, you can have a lot of followers. So this example is not seen as competition. It's actually seen as strengthening your policy and interacting more, because the minister alone would never be able to do what all his civil servants can do. But of course, maybe you shouldn't go against your minister's policy, I guess.
Yeah, and I think again that's a similar story for us. I think there is an issue about trust and confidence here, and the ministers have to be able to let go of the reins to a certain degree to allow their officials to express themselves and trust them to get it right. Now, we won't always get it right, and we've given you a couple of sort of minor examples of how that might happen. But some of our most successful communicators, and let's be clear, diplomacy is about communication. That's all it's about, essentially. So the key to really successful communication is knowing your audience and being able to engage them. And of course, if you are an ambassador or a consul general or an official in post, then you will understand your audience better than probably your elected officials will. So there's a really interesting, detailed debate you can get into there. And one of our ambassadors who's very good at this was in the Lebanon. And they've got all sorts of very, very tricky issues to deal with in the Lebanon. And he wasn't afraid of taking them on and giving his own point of view, being very clear that this was his own point of view. Which kind of takes us on to an area which would be interesting to explore, which is how do you tackle those difficult issues through social media? How do you do it in the Netherlands, Natalie?
Yeah, so that's really a difficult one, and maybe you here in the audience, you're more experts than we are, who are learning by doing. But we see, for instance, now with the European Union and the refugees, which there's actually a refugee crisis, that this needs to be somehow managed also through social media and the way we communicate, because not everybody thinks the same. And of course, sensitive issues, but you want to share information, you should really think, what is the information you want to send? How do you send it out? And then again, the European Union, not all the member states have the same opinion. So imagine that you are the one who has to Twitter about, what's the point of view of the EU in this sense.
Do you want me to talk about the European Union?
Well, you could.
No, we can move on. But I can talk about tackling difficult issues, if you like.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, one of the things where there is a lot of space for creativity, and government's not necessarily known for creativity, is exactly tackling those difficult issues. So, just two examples that we've had in the last year in the UK. Last summer in July, we ran a conference in the UK which is about preventing sexual violence in conflict. And we launched that campaign as a digital campaign from the word go. I mean, it obviously helped that Angelina Jolie was the front and center and one of the key voices. We leveraged obviously her celebrity and the NGOs that work with her and work others. And the social media channels gave a platform that we wouldn't have been able to get through a normal government seminar. So we got on the Twitter handle, we got about 11,500 followers, but the hashtag, which was, I think, off the top of my head, Act Now or something like that, had over 200,000 hits during the conference. So that's an audience we've never got before. And on a similar, Time to Act, hashtag Time to Act. And on a similar one was on child protection, which is a very difficult issue, and we've got a session later on today. I'm looking at Colleen in the background of the room there. This is something that is a priority for us. This is something that is a priority for all of our communities, no matter where you live. And the hashtag We Protect was the name of the summit that was run in the UK, and that was a global summit, not just for government, but for everybody who's interested in this kind of issue. So as a campaigning mechanism, social media is in many ways unparalleled, because you're getting to audiences that you would never get to as government. The temptation as a diplomat is just to talk government to government. That's not diplomacy. We need to talk to everybody. There was a question down here. Yeah. Can everybody hear that, or do we need a mic? Yeah. Okay. So I'll try and repeat it. But you're working at Miami Beach, and you found that social media was a really good way of getting messaging across about littering and being responsible citizens. And then people were coming back to you on the back of that to give you ideas about what you should develop in terms of your image. Yeah, so you were using, so it was a real feedback loop, and that you were using your followers to actually help inform others.
And the great thing is you can use it at different levels, because I know now that we're live streaming with other cities. There are people in Rotterdam, people in London, people in Sao Paulo watching us here in Miami. And you can interact as a city for a very specific event or a specific weekend, as you were mentioning. You were mentioning summits, because, of course, if you want to bring politicians together or you want to put something on the political agenda, sometimes you have a summit and you start using a hashtag. So these are things that I also see in the different layers of government, that we start to use it a lot more. Sometimes to get information out, sometimes to look what's going on, to be able to respond to what people are thinking, and sometimes really to influence a debate. Like when you have a summit, you really want to put something on the agenda and you hope that people will start twittering or will start sharing. So that's the way I think that governments at different levels use it, which is a really good example. Yes.
Sorry, Emma Marwood from the U.S. State Department, and I'm curious how you handle, and I think this is an issue for brands, private sector, government, interaction as opposed to just sort of pushing out information and sharing things, particularly from institutional accounts as opposed to personal accounts of officials. How do you, I think that can often be a difficult decision, to what level are we going to really go back and forth with people, particularly when it comes to policy issues or something like that, while at the same time, I think everyone involved in social media knows that that's really where you're getting the most sort of bang for your buck with social media is the actual interaction, not just pushing out a narrative of this is what this minister did today or this is what we're talking about today.
Great question. and I've got the mic, Dave tells me, so I'll try and then I ask some advice. So yes, you're very, very right, because we had a research done and we saw that one of our ministries who was only sending out information which was very formal, there was no response, because of course you can see how well social media is used. So actually when you make these graphics like you see over there, the dot remains very small, there's no interaction. And I think you hope, if you are that ministry, that people do read at least what you put out, but at least you don't get a communication going. The example I gave with my minister being very much involved, at a certain moment we were not expecting that. So he had to really close down his account for a couple of days in order to get everything sorted out and what exactly was the discussion about and how to approach it. And then, he picked up from there, which was, learning by doing, because you don't always know, I guess that's the same for you, what the public thinks, wants, and who is going to interact. And I guess at State Department there's already a lot of experience that sometimes it goes the way you had orchestrated it to go, and then sometimes something happens and you really have to see what you can do. I don't know, do you have...
Yeah, I mean, I would say to that, I mean, we're just working in unknown territory to a large extent. A lot of the main social media channels we work on now haven't even been around a decade. And what we've seen is that information and opinion, particularly opinion, has been democratized. And government can broadcast all it wants, but it doesn't mean people are going to believe us. So when you have the most trusted news source being Google, who has no journalists, then there's a real issue about trust and about where you get your information from. Now, obviously, as government, we would always like to believe that we have the single version of the truth. But we know from experience that it doesn't matter whether you do or don't, the influence of that is limited. And if you look at what happened, for example, in the Arab Spring, which started off with one disgruntled trader setting himself on fire in a small town in Tunisia, and suddenly was a conflagration across the region, no government can control that, no matter how much they would like to. So we find ourselves as policymakers trying to set a context to talk to our citizens and to our stakeholders when we've got no control of the agenda. So that poses a whole series of different questions for us, not least, how do you respond? Are you responding to the news cycle? Are you responding to real facts, or is it just someone's got their opinion out there that then becomes fact? And therefore, government is designed to work with tangibles, and it's having to learn a whole new way of adapting to the media space out there. And when you look at the numbers of people engaged, and you look at the global consequences you can have on this, and the war on terror, the fight against extremism, the fight against intolerance, whichever way you want to look at it, is asking a whole series of questions about values and communities where we as governments don't necessarily have the answers, but what we do have through social media and the penetration social media has within our societies, we have just an amazing tool with which and through which to engage our communities to say, well, what do you think? And I think we need to be humble about it. We need to say we don't have all the answers. We think we know what we want to do, but what do you think? And tell us, and we need your feedback, because otherwise we won't be making good policy. So they're really difficult questions, and I think that is why our governments have been investing a lot in social media, because it is democracy. That's how it works. And it might be a good time to discuss about whether there's room for censorship in this, and how do governments feel about clamping down on that democracy. Let's have a question over here. John's got a mic, so he's coming around with a mic.
Good afternoon, Andy with In South Florida, at In South Florida on Twitter. We consult with a couple of government agencies here in the community, and one particular agency just started to use Periscope to broadcast internal activities, and they had a troll. They blocked that troll. That troll got himself an attorney. This agency is now in some legal hot water. How is that handled over in your area of the world as opposed to how it is here? I have been told that a governmental agency cannot block or remove because it infringes on the user's First Amendment right. So I know that laws are being written and technology is moving 40, 50 times faster than people can actually put together the concept. But this is a case that's happening in South Florida right now. I wonder how it affects you guys.
Natalie? I'll tell you what I think. Obviously, we don't have the First Amendment, but we do have freedom of information, and freedom of speech and freedom of expression is very much at the heart of our value set in the UK as it is here in the US. Now, whether we would resort to a legal issue on that, I don't know is the answer. I'm not aware that we have to, but we do need to get the legal base right about how to deal with these kinds of cases. My response, I think, to that would be the reason we do this is because we want to be more transparent and more accountable. There are obviously activities in which government engages that we don't want everybody to be aware of. You know, when we're in a delicate negotiation about something big and important, we want to tell everybody that we've done it and it's hugely successful and everybody's life is going to change, but we don't necessarily want or expect to give a running commentary on how it's going. Now, Periscope and the immediacy that those kinds of apps gives us a challenge. So all we can do is kind of try and get ahead of the curve a bit and say, okay, well, I'll give you an example. For example, in the UK, we're thinking very hard about how do we counter extremism, whether it's in the UK, whether it's elsewhere. Now, that very quickly can take you down the route of censorship. Now, we are trying to develop our legal base to try and deal with this. And the Prime Minister made a big speech about 3-4 weeks ago about this, where he was saying at the core of the issue here is what are our values and how do we confront people who are going to try and undermine and fragment our values that we believe our society should be built around. You know, liberty, democracy, freedom of expression. And there has to be a point where either government or society imposes limits. Now, that is going to be a bit of a movable a bit of a movable boundary. And in fact, our legislation in the UK says that incitement and hate crimes can be illegal, but it very much depends on the way that it's phrased and the way that it's done. So we will prosecute the people for that, and we will remove stuff from the internet. But it's not a hard and fast boundary, and we'll have to test the case law as we go forward, and that's one of the things that we're trying very hard to look at now.
Yeah, so I can underline that. There is also, there's a lot of lawyers looking at what is punishable, what is incorrect, what should be removed, and what is freedom of speech. This, of course, is a debate, I guess, in a lot of countries, and specifically in the public domain. I also want to underline what Dave says about trust and about image building. Our minister also said when we had all the ambassadors in January, last January, back in the Netherlands, in The Hague, in headquarters, that we, as diplomats of our country, we also stand for certain values. And you have to think about what you're doing. You cannot just, go periscoping yourself, I don't know, maybe dancing on Miami Beach. Maybe that people will like that, but it's not professional. So of course, there is your own thinking of how you want to influence people, with what values you want to do that. And then, of course, you have instructions, what kind of information you want to put out there. And of course, some things you need to really think about the words you use and the way you put it out there. Because some things can be very much hurting, or somebody, and then you get a reaction that you would actually not want to get. So I guess it's not just a free for all and let's just put anything out there. There's really also people thinking about strategies, people thinking about what's the image you want to portray. Stick to yourself. Be the same person you are in reality as you are on social media, because otherwise you're gonna fall somewhere down the line. But of course, I know that in the United States, lawyers get on cases more quickly than we in Europe. We just ask the lawyers to look at it. Usually, we learn from you here on this side of the Atlantic. Are there any more questions from the audience, or from? If it's okay with you, we first do him, because you already had a question. And maybe, I don't know, through Twitter, are there questions coming? Okay, we'll wait for the questions through Twitter.
There was a prior question about deleting something, being a public agency and deleting something. Over there, number one, do you guys have any laws that prevent public agencies from deleting public records? And number two, do you think that rules preventing deletion, preventing the public agencies who are on Facebook and on social media from communicating, do you think the rules that prevent deletion are fostering more honest communication between government and citizens? I know it's two distant parts, but let's just say the first
Dave
part
is
is there a
nodding.
rule that says you're not allowed to delete anything that you post on social media because it becomes a public record?
I understand the question in general, but it's really hard to give a general answer, because it so much depends on what kind of topic and the sensitivity of the topic and what it caused. So I guess that's one thing that we're all learning, because we're all in this together, is that social media, there's not one way of doing it, and there's not one law, or it's really, I think we're all learning by doing, but there's such a big difference in different topics and different ways to use social media. So there's also not really one general answer to your question, I think, because on some topics it will be very different from others. I'm not aware of really public authorities deleting messages. It hasn't been out in the papers in the Netherlands, so I don't think that it has happened. But maybe things will happen in the future, and you need to think about something like that. I'm not sure.
I'll often delete my tweets when I've misspelt them or got the handle wrong, but we try not to. And we shouldn't, because it's about trust and transparency. The matter of public record is a really interesting question, because, of course, as the channels become more ephemeral, how do you capture that? How do you capture Snapchat and keep that on a public record? Well, I don't know if there is a way yet. So we are, like a previous answer, we're slightly in uncharted territory. The trolling issue is a really interesting case because, of course, what we are doing is we are giving a point of view of our government which is not going to be popular. So when we communicate as UK and we communicate about Russia and Ukraine, that is going to stir some very, very strong opinion. And it's often expressed pretty bluntly, let's put it that way. So we haven't got the resources to go and delete those kinds of things. I don't think we even want to, because we want to use media to engage and inform. Now, there becomes a point where, okay, you can have the back and forth, he said, she said, about the facts and about the basis and about the argument, and that's part of it. But at the end of the day, we're not resourced to keep running those conversations on and on and on. This is a part of what we do, and it's part of the mix of what we do. So I mentioned the Iran deal earlier. We in the UK believe this is the right deal. That is not the opinion in many parts of the society that I deal with here in the US. Now, we can debate this until Congress votes and it's done or not, or the President vetoes and it's done or not. But actually, I have to use lots of different ways of expressing our opinion on this and influencing our opinion on this. And I'm not going to delete the debate because I disagree with it. So we have a responsibility to maintain the public record. When it comes to ephemeral media, it's going to be much tougher to do because you lose control of it. I don't know who's going to retweet me, so I don't know how I can sort of be accountable for how they may interpret my opinion. It's a tricky area, definitely.
So what we usually do in order not to delete anything or call back anything is when the response is far more harsh or maybe insulting, we try to respond with words that make the sender understand that this is not the kind of debate we would like. We would like a debate, we would want to interact. We don't want to recall what we've set out to do, but we don't want to get into a totally nasty discussion. So sometimes there were incidents where we had to change the tone of the debate in order to have the debate and interact with the people. Any more questions from the audience? Yes, you go.
One of the things about social media opening up government, it also opens it up to hackers. If you remember Obama getting killed, every large major corporations had their Twitter account at some point compromised. And the more people have access, the more the chance is getting compromised. So what do you do differently, or what can you do to prevent the eventuality of getting hacked, getting your government Twitter accounts, for example, or Facebook accounts hacked?
Yeah. So this is really about security, cybersecurity, and a lot of new technologies that come about, a lot of new rules, a lot of new things that come about because we've come to understand that this is indeed what's happening. You open up, you want to be transparent, and you actually take a chance of being hacked. Well, there was a whole conference in The Hague about those issues. So it's something that we're very much aware of, but that we indeed not yet have all the answers to. But what we do see is that, if you can hack, you also have the intelligence and capabilities of making systems to prevent that again. So it's also kind of an innovative spurt to create new technologies. I think we're coming towards the end, yes. Maybe, I don't know, Dave, would you share some future thoughts? Do you want to share some future future thoughts where we're going?
Yeah, happy to. So if there are some really, I know you're all social media influencers and you want to hack my account to make its content more interesting, then come and talk to me afterwards. I'll be quite interested in thinking about it. I mean, that's one of the challenges. So I think one of the challenges we have looking towards the future, I've touched on one, which is the ephemeral nature of working in this space where the communication is going to become much more immediate, even more immediate now. We mentioned Periscope, we mentioned Snapchat, and as a government that gives us particular challenges because you're going to miss a lot. Now, that's a good thing, of course. We don't want to see everything, but it makes a challenge for us in terms of how we are going to manage our engagement. The other thing that I think we're going to be looking at is to be getting much more savvy about how we use these tools and how we segment our market. So we've already seen that businesses are using big data. Political parties are using big data to really micro-target their message. I think we'll have to get much more savvy at doing that ourselves, and we'll have to do that in an environment that's evolving much more quickly. So we're going to have to get nimble, and we're going to have to distribute our decision-making and the way we communicate much more quickly. And we're going to, I think, and this is my personal feeling, I think we're just going to have to loosen control of big central government machinery and actually devolve more of those kinds of decisions and more of those kinds of abilities to communicate out to the markets. If you're talking about commercial speak, you need to be close to your market. We are no different in diplomacy.
Yeah, so that's also my future, I would say step on the horizon. I think that our big bureaucracies and machines will actually support us in their analysis. So, of course, you can see what's happening on social media and you can analyze it. So hopefully there will be more analysis in the future of what's happening, what's out there, so we get feedback, so we can go out there, and use that feedback. And I kind of see that that relation with headquarters in a way, you as a parent try to teach your children who have far more knowledge on social media than I think I and you maybe have as parents, because you want to discuss with them, what's happening, what did you put out there, did people like that or not. So I guess that's also the way that we as diplomats, we are going to use it, because we will have to use it and it's only going to grow. With those words and with you going into your workshops, I would really, really like to thank you. We would like to thank you. So on behalf of both of us,
Thank you.
thank you very much. And we would like to thank the organization, of course, for having us here up to open it. I wish you a really, really tremendous social media week.
And so do I. And let's continue the discussion.
Yes. Yes, and we would like to give you a present, actually, as well. So maybe... Yes, please.
Okay, so my corporate account is UK in Florida, at UK in Florida, and I'm at Dave Proger FCO, which I think is on the screen.
Yeah, I think you can see it on the screen. I just want to mention as well that we also have NL in the USA. That is another account that we use throughout the whole of the US. And then I would very much like...
Terry's gone.
She's gone. She's going to be thanked and she leaves the stage. No, she's getting others. We would so much like to thank you. Larry? Yes, Larry's here. We would very much like to thank you. You also have a present. Yeah.
Bottle of whiskey.
No, actually, we put it in a bag. The American way, you put gifts in a bag. I love that. We wrap them in Holland, but okay. So, on behalf of both of us, thank you so much for giving us a stage and interact with the audience. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And now he's going to take the presents.
Give it to her. It's better. I won't get in trouble.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.